Hello, good evening, everyone. I imagine that you are not expecting this, and while we wait for some people to connect, I will explain why I'm here and I am live streaming, and I haven't been doing this for a very long time. So yeah, the point is, those of you who actually follow the channel will know that I had my umpteenth health issue, and so since it's been a couple of weeks, since it would have been, if I skipped this week, would have been a couple of weeks without videos, and I'm not sure I can produce a video for the next week. So I said, at least let's do a live stream so the guys are not left without anything. So there's one thing that I would like to say that is not related with anything about the channel or else. Before starting, some of you may already know that I'm in touch with Metatron, who is a famous YouTuber who talks about story, mostly ancient and medieval, who deals mostly with ancient and medieval history. He had a bereavement recently. His mother passed away from cancer. He made a heartbreaking video about that. Just go on his channel and leave a comment, leave a hug under the video, just to let him know. It's something that I did, and I would like you to do if you follow his channel. He's an acquaintance of mine, so, and we're not exactly friends, but he's an acquaintance of mine. He helped me in a few situations, so yes. So okay, there's a vocal minority asking for Otis. Sorry, Otis is, like it always happens at this time of the night, is often recharging, so he can't come tonight. I'm sorry. He will be part of the coming videos for sure. How many people do we have? 65. Well, already that's an enormous amount of people. I was thinking that for a surprise live stream there were going to be maybe 20. I would have been sort of happy. And okay, so suppose we can start. So first couple of words why I'm here. So as you see, I'm one-handed. I had a neuropathic pain, so which basically means I pinched a nerve. Normally it's my heart that is creating problem, and in this case is my left arm. You may see it on the right because of the camera, but it is my left arm, and doctors are not sure if I pinched something here in my neck or something in my elbow. And I'm seeing a consultant on Monday and see how to progress. Point in now is a bit better, and now actually I've taken a double helping of painkillers, but it is one of the worst pains at all. When I was at the hospital, I had to go to the A&E because I couldn't really do anything. And I don't tell you the story of what I was there, but it was really painful. It was really excruciatingly painful. Just let me know in the chat. Sound and video, is everything okay? Best wishes, sending love. Thank you guys. You sound exhausted. I'm actually tired. Buonasera. Okay, please let me know if everything is okay, all good. 11 Royals, thank you. Rurak, both good, thank you. Adesh Karve, absolutely, sir. Okay, so what's the program for tonight? There's one thing that I didn't do for a long time, which was answering the questions that people leave on the form online. I haven't been doing this for ages. It actually went, I would say, below my radar. So there's not that many, to be honest, but I think it's right to cover at least few of those and just have a quick chat. Then we are here, we are among friends, we can have a chat together, and we'll take some questions from the chat, and we'll see how it goes, okay? So let us start. Okay. I'm sorry I couldn't really prepare this particularly well, so I'm just reading the questions and telling you I don't have the lower third with the questions. So, okay. So there are 3 subjects that are actually covered in a way or another in various questions from various people, so I will give a generic answer to those. The first is what is my background. The second is where are the sources. The third is how do you get very knowledgeable in the subject. So my background, I told this several times in the past, but obviously not everybody may know. So I am by training an aerospace engineer. Then I worked for about a year then I worked for about a year in an Italian, well, a bit more than 1 year actually, in an Italian aerospace company that was part of my final dissertation. I was working there, and while I was working there, I did my final dissertation for the master degree. By the way, I'm saying master degree, but it's the Italian system was at the time completely different from the Anglo-Saxon. So it is what I got was not exactly that. It was mostly, but it's normally considered equivalent to that. So then I worked in the aerospace industry for a short time. Then it was a terrible time for the Italian aerospace industry. It was the time where was the so-called PACE dividend by the end of for the end of the Cold War. So I went on working on another area that I liked, not as much as aircraft, obviously, but I quite liked. This was IT. Then, working in IT, I had some aerospace companies as customers, but they were IT customers. So I became, and as a consultant, I became more familiar to, say, to the management aspect of the aerospace industry rather than the technology aspect. Then, having said that, I'm a massive aerospace nerd. Aircraft are my passion. I always kept up to date, particularly, say, the military part, and I always kept up to date. I always kept studying. I never stopped. So, I mean, I am not as knowledgeable as a real professional of the area would be, but I have the advantage that unlike a real professional, I have kind of overall general knowledge of most of the aspects involved in project design, construction of an aircraft, and in the tactics. And then I followed obviously the been particularly interested in the military part, I always kept up to date with the open source information available on what was going on in the aerospace world. I may have to say that I also spent a bit more than a year in the Italian Air Force, but I wasn't flying. I was a communication and electronic systems operator slash repairer. Okay, so that's basically my background. When I started working for YouTube, working for YouTube, that's nobody works for YouTube. I mean, when I started doing YouTube, I obviously pick up again a number of subjects and I refresh my knowledge. And I keep keeping well, I try keeping up to date. So that's basically my background. So I mean, sometimes I meet some of you and they have very deep and specific knowledge that I sort of blush. I would say, like, here's the microphone, do it. You do the video. But okay, that's the fine. The second question is the sources. Where are the sources? So it's the open. The sources are the open source community. I have no access to any kind of reserved information, and if I had, I couldn't do this probably. So I just read. Obviously, the internet is obviously the main source these days, but I'm the kind of person that keeps buying and reading and watching paper articles. You don't find everything on the internet. You just don't. So that's quite important. It's also quite useful to have had the background I was mentioning before, so I can sort of understand a bit deeper with a modicum of depth what is implied by the open source information. So that's basically where I get the sources. And part of the questions were asking me, where are the sources? They do exist, but I reserve the sources for those who support the channel. It is the Patreon members and the people who join the channel and support the channel through YouTube. What I normally do after each video, some videos are not really worth it, but most of the videos have a very long list of sources that I've used, and I publish them on Patreon or in a YouTube post that is reserved to the channel members. And so they can go through the sources. So, and they are very. They have skin in the game. They're giving me money. I think it's only fair that I give them something extra. It's a bit different than the policy that other channels do, but I really want to differentiate in this way. By being a member, you also have access to some other material that I produce. There are also sometimes some videos that are reserved for the supporters. These videos normally are about the backstage of what happens in the channel, how I am doing, what I'm trying to do, my plans for the future, and so on. So that's the reason. The third question was, how do I become as knowledgeable as you? my friend, I don't know what to tell you. As I said, just follow the internet. Just follow the professional literature. Just follow what's available. What you're seeing is I'm 55, so what you're seeing is 45, let's say, years of someone, an average guy, more or less, following all the news that are actually available, and having this kind of scientific background, technology, engineering, this kind of engineering background. I can sort of find my way through that material a bit more easily than others, but that's basically it. Okay, these were the three themes that were more or less shared among various people. Let me have a look at, wow, 127 people. Let me have a look at the chat and see if there is any particular comments. Thank you for Mohave. Thank you for the suggestion. That's a Adesh asked the question toward the end again. There's a number of there's a lot of people actually asking question, and thank Matthew Kern, get well. Thank you for the best wishes. Thank you for the hello. Okay, there's a number of technical questions. Let's leave them for the end. Let me go through a few of the questions that have been left on the forum and on the forum. Yeah, you have to forgive me. I'm not in my best conditions. So let's go through some of the questions that have been left on the forum on the internet, and then I will take questions and comments and about the chat. Okay, so He-Man. Okay, I know that the L-band radar can detect stealth aircraft, but I have always been told that L-band radar cannot lock on stealth aircraft. Can you please clarify if a MiG-31 can detect and destroy stealth aircraft or not? So, despite what some others may tell you that low-frequency radars cannot detect stealth aircraft, that's not true. It's a matter connected to the resonance of the characteristic dimensions of the aircraft. I mean, large aircraft like the B-2 and probably the B-21 is large enough, have less of a for those aircraft is less of a problem. Large aircraft, low frequency is less of a problem, a bit counterintuitively, but it's definitely a fact. There's some interesting, nice YouTuber out there, some nice colleagues that tell you that is not true because number of their strange reasoning. That's definitely a fact. Problem is that the precision, the accuracy of these radars is quite low, and the box in which that contains the aircraft, which with an X-band radar on a target that is visible is extremely precise, and the error is in the order of meters. With L-band and even lower band is the size of the order of kilometers. It's normally quite narrow in distance, but it is very large in azimuth and elevation. So then it's impossible to lock. Depending on what you mean for locking, in the sense that even though you have that kind of identification, which is not really precise, if you have active radar homing missile whose seeker is relatively powerful and capable of detecting, covering a relatively large amount of space in front of the missile, you can attempt to launch a volley of these missiles toward the cube where you have identified the aircraft and hope for the best. And always consider there's always the problem that radar fuses have problem. The only problem with radar fuses, because radar fuses against a stealth system may have problems detonating because the target is not reflecting too much radiation. We have seen this problem with the not with the Taurus, with the Western weapons in Ukraine, when sometimes the missile of the Panzer pass at interception distance from the target but didn't explode, because the fact that the target was relatively stealthy or covered with a rather absorbing material coating did not produce enough return for the radar fuse to go off. So that's a further protection that stealth has toward, let's say, missile interceptors that is hardly spoken about, but that's the case. And so locking on a target means that you have a very fast update of the track data, so you don't risk losing the target, and you use those data to direct a missile. This is particularly important for semi-active radar homing missiles, but an active radar homing missile that could be, for example, guided with a data link in the vicinity of a stealth aircraft that is visible by other means, could actually hit the aircraft even without a specific lock from a radar. Having said that, the question was about, can the MiG-31 shoot down a stealth aircraft? Now, the Zaslon, if I remember correctly, is working in X-band, which is the band where the F-22 and the F-35s are optimized for being stealth. Okay, the NGAD is looking for, and all the future aircraft are trying to achieve some sort of wideband stealth. But the current generation of F-22, F-35 are optimized for the X band, which is the most common band used by aircraft radar and guidance, and for the missile guidance. So a MiG-31 will not be able to detect a stealth aircraft particularly far from the aircraft. It needs to get up close. However, considering some of the handoff systems that the Russians had, go back to the Soviet time, it is well possible for the MiG-31, for example, launching a salvo of missile, as we said before, in the direction of the stealth aircraft, and a sort of trap into several different weapons. This is Obviously, this is consuming a lot of weapons, but it is always a possibility. I hope that this is answering your question. Planes and Bowling is asking, would loitering cruise missiles or suicide drones ever reach the tacit rainbow spec actually work? I have no idea. I don't remember off the top of my head what the tacit rainbow specifications were. What I can tell you is that loitering munitions are working very well. That this is something that is going to be definitely in the arsenal for many times. And there's all these new systems based on unmanned guidance, sophisticated forms of unmanned guidance are definitely changing the face of the war, and that's a fact. The one guy, can passive radar detect stealth? And if a country deploys, and intrigated them all over the country, can they be effective at tracking stealth? And I heard passive radars are difficult to detect. Is that true? So it's not clear to me what you mean by passive radar. I believe you are referring to that class of system which are a bit more than experimental by this stage, in which they are using non-specific electromagnetic sources of radiation, like mobile phones antennas, rather than radio emitters or TV emitters, these kind of things, and use those emissions to as a sort of radar beams to try to identify, for example, a stealth aircraft or an aircraft which is not visible by other means. We don't have a lot of information. It seems that there have been some claims that they were able to intercept or view an F-35, but this is not really confirmed. To me, it seems a very complicated technology. I mean, being completely passive and not having any sort of footprint is actually very useful. Electromagnetic footprint is actually very useful. I don't know how complicated it is to pull this off. Because I am thinking to the part of actually qualifying and IDing the echoes that are actually detected, in the sense that the normal radar has ways, modern radars have ways to identify the target, which is almost as important that identifying that something is there. So if you see a beep on the radar, you may know, hey, altitude, speed, bearing, these kind of things, or direction, but you don't know what it is, no? So you need to understand if it is a friend, a foe, or neutral, or whatever. So I see very difficult using this system for the ID part. For the detection part, they seem to sort of be working, but I can't tell you exactly. I don't have detailed information. Always the one guy says, and what's your opinion on the Russian electronic warfare systems? Because one got captured, so the West knows all about the system via reverse engineering, and so they will be effective or outdated. This is a more general problem, in the sense that really a lot of Russian weapons have been examined by Western specialists in Ukraine. So Western specialists know a lot about these systems. The opposite may be true for the Russians, but they acquired some Western systems. But that's the, I mean, the scale is much smaller. Now we have seen at work most of the important Russian systems, and so every weapon has, when the challenge is technological, okay, but also when it comes to tactics. Every new weapon, every new tactics, the first time that is used tend to be very effective because it is a surprise for the opponent. And if it is working, they don't have an immediate way of reacting, or they don't have a procedure for reacting yet. So the very first use of a weapon tend to be very effective. But then the effectiveness tend to degrade in time because the opponent actually understands what's going on, reacts to what you're doing with new tactics or technology, and then the effectiveness is reduced. One blatant case was the fact that the HIMARS missiles that became that were jumped by the Russians, because the Russians could jump the GPS signal. The same happened with the JDAMs, and but this is obviously prompting on the other side some reactions in creating something that can somehow resist to these countermeasures. It's the endless confrontations, is the endless fight between offense and defense, between the two sides, that never ends. So one of the reasons, in fact, for example, one of the reasons for I think Ukraine will never get the very last variants of any Western weapon is exactly this. For example, it seems now that Ukraine may get at some point some Gripens. The ideal thing would be to have the Gripens with the Meteor missile, but I don't think that the Meteor will be given in any form or way to Ukraine, because that would mean reducing the effectiveness of the weapon the first time the first time directly, the first time that it is confronted with another system. So yes, the war in Ukraine has created this transfer of know-how and information between the two sides that is not in favor of the Russians. Bingo is asking, how can a generation be determined if it's not yet clear which technology will be decisive? Feel like every country wants to blindly build a next-gen fighter. So, third, fourth, fifth generation labels are basically marketing labels, and you end up using them to sort of lump aircraft together. Normally, I came to think that fifth generation, at least in the way I'm using it, I tend to think that the fifth generation is characterized by being low observable, if not outright stealth, so VLO, very low observable, and it characterized by sensor fusion to some extent. Everything else is probably not really as decisive as these two elements. F-15 Lover. In a hypothetical war, which component of People's Liberation Army can be a headache for the US Army? Okay, Here we are talking the army, the army only. I think from what I've seen, I think that the Chinese are developing they're doctrinally developing the integration with the helicopters, combat helicopters, at a very high level. They're building a lot of them also. That could be an important element. Giving as a baseline the fact that the helicopter has shown to suffer quite a lot. The surface, the air defenses, the ground-based air defenses. So that's a thing. Then the other element I think is drones. I think the Chinese are way ahead from in drone management, in drone design and drone management. They still have an advantage. They started early, and today they have an advantage. And I think they have a very clear idea of how to integrate drones in ground forces. Having said that, I don't know how many ground battles are there going to be if push comes to shove between the United States and China, to be honest. Big Old Bill is asking, the music at the beginning of the video, I love it. Who is this and what's the name of the song? So the name of the song is Haunt, and it is one of the free YouTube music that is available when you become a creator. In the YouTube Studio dashboard, there is one element, that is one function, which is music and the sound effects. It's there. I have no idea who is the author, honestly. I suppose you have an account on YouTube, you could do the same. If you click on the top right on your account, it will tell. So there is one that is YouTube Studio. Even though you're not publishing, is available anyway. Click on that, and you'll be able to see it. Okay. Curious is asking, hello sir, I would like to know your opinion on the incident between Su-34 and the Italian F-35. Mainly F-35 radar was blinded from ECM from the Su-34. Thank you. Okay, this thing is, there could be some truth in that. It wasn't probably Su-34, but I've seen the story told with Su-35, for example, or other things. The story goes as follows: that was an Italian Su-35 in the Baltics, because the Italian Air Force is part of the units that are actually deployed in the Baltic states for air policing and airspace control. So the Italian Air Force provides some units, and is saying, and apparently one F-35 was deployed there, and the DAS was unable to warn the pilot that a Su-35 was coming closer, and he actually realized that and the pilot realized that it was so close that it could have been hit by the Russian aircraft without. And when he came back, he had a psychological problem. He stopped flying and so on. There is zero official communication from both sides of this thing has happened. I suppose that is not impossible, because even the most sophisticated, even the best technology in the world may fail under certain conditions. And it is, and anyway, the F-35 is very advanced, but it cannot beat the law of physics. If you a brute force jamming attack with enough energy will blind any sensor on the F-35 anyway. Not sure Su-35 can do that. Su-35 can do that, but in principle it is possible. So if I have to give a possibility, I don't think this has more than 10% probabilities of being a true story. This is probably, rumors that go around. Ask is asking, fittingly, is there any connection between the fighter airplane design and fixed-wing drone? As I want to make a fixed-wing drone, and my first duty is to explore about the design, and then he's asking. So what I am suggesting you, if you want to learn more about the design, particularly of a drone, and particularly of subsonic system, subsonic aircraft, there is a series of books by Roskam, R-O-S-K-A-M, which are full of, chock full of design methodologies for designing an aircraft. Go online, read those, procure those. That will be the best, probably the best place to look, the best place to start. Carolina Cavalier. No, I suppose that's the pronunciation. Sorry, it's not. Do you think that the decision to collaborate on the sixth generation fighter portends further geostrategic partnership and alignment among the various governments that have decided to do so? Great Britain, Italy, and Japan, as well as Germany, France, and Spain, behave more like two alliance blocs in the later 21st century, in part due to their decision to work together to the GCAPS and FCAS programs, respectively. Up to a point, yes. But you should examine the position of every specific country. For example, Italy being in the league, in the same league, I'll say, the same team as Great Britain and Japan, probably means a very close alignment with the United States and the Atlantic policy. It is because Great Britain is basically the 51st state of the United States, and Japan has lately managed to become part of this inner circle of US allies that includes Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and so on. So this means that Italy is probably in this camp with no, let's say, with no hesitation, no doubts. If you ask me what I think about it, I won't answer because I want to keep because it wouldn't be very polite. But anyway. Then for Germany, France, and Spain, the situation is different. There's been a long story of cooperation between Germany and France, because the hostility between France and Germany has been for a very long time one of the engines of European conflictualities. No, so by reaction in this era where everyone seems to think that big is nice, they have this long story of cooperation. So but France is the only NATO member that has maintained some level of autonomy in compared with the United States. And it doesn't matter if some other YouTubes that are sort of very famous, that are sort of mentioned in professional seminars, tell you that because in every NATO mission there are national caveats, then the NATO is not moving altogether. Unfortunately, the NATO is a democratic institution only at face value. NATO is an extension of the United States, for good or for bad. This may be considered good or may be considered bad, but that's the situation. So in this case, is more France probably wanting to retain some level of autonomy, which I praise them for what they're trying to do. So, and well, probably Spain just needed to attach to a group in a way or another. So, Acciaio Temprato, which is obviously an Italian viewer, is asking, "Hi Gus, thank you for your unavailable content. I hope you are doing well with health and weather problems. Have you ever thought about doing a meeting for the community in presence?" Yes, I thought about that. It would be, I'm still not sure how to organize that. Probably this gentleman is suggesting Italy, obviously, but probably London would be better. However, if we organize something which is okay, we all go together, we book a room in a pub and we spend the night drinking and chatting and laughing, and that's fine. That's something that is doable relatively easily. If we want to make an event, a real event, with a group, some people presenting some interesting topics and so on, that's very difficult to organize and also expensive. So, well, when we'll get to larger numbers, that could be a good idea. But yeah, I think I will do something in the first type at some point. But yeah, I don't know why, and I don't know how. So. Okay, then listener is asking, what is the secret of universe? It's 42. I can tell you is the number 42, and I'm pretty much sure of that. Phoenix is asking, hi, in the last days the Ukrainian Air Force claimed the downing of some Russian air assets, such as two A-50s, a couple of Su-35s, and a lot of Su-34s. As far as I know, except the AWACS, maybe one or two Su-35, there was no confirmation for Russian sources about any one of the Su-34s, and he keeps asking about how do we know what's happening in Ukraine? And the answer is we don't. So if both contenders do not confirm, we don't. There are indirect ways of confirming that are related, for example, with the obituaries in the newspapers or things like that. But it's actually quite difficult. So what may happen is, and I mean, it's not strange. It's not strange at all. Okay, that every Air Force historically has always claimed 2 or 3 times the amount of damage that they really did. That's always happened. So it is it is very difficult to understand. There are several. It's not always a disinformation. There are several reasons why you may think you have actually destroyed an aircraft and you didn't. You may have just damage, for example, then the aircraft can be recovered, or you have hit a decoy, so you didn't, rather than an aircraft, and so on. So it's quite difficult. The point is, if the Ukrainian had been as effective as they claim to have been with their air defenses, there would be no Russian Air Force operating today, and we know it's not the case. So we have to consider this. I tend, in this case, to be more to trust more the Russian claims rather than the Ukrainian claims in this area, because they have less motivation to show success. Okay, consider this: if the Russian hit an aircraft, the aircraft falls into Ukrainian territory, nobody will show it as destroyed, because Western systems, Western media, obviously tend to support Ukraine. They have a very good operational security. So if they don't want to show, they won't show it. So for the Russian to claim that they destroyed an aircraft, they sort of need to be sure. In the flip side is not the case. The Ukrainians have all the incentive to say that they did incredibly well for a number of reasons. So in this point, in this specific area, I tend to believe more the Russians than Ukrainians. Okay, last question, Cesarin. Thinking of the drone situation in Ukraine, I reckon that Ukrainians are having a very hard time determining friendly versus enemy drones. How do you think one could create a system to track friendly drones without obviously broadcasting their location to their opposing forces? Optical, my friend. I mean, if you are talking small drones that operate above the battlefield, the best thing to do is just color them with your colors, and potentially use or maybe use a paint that is actually showing off in the infrared for night operations, paint that is visible in the infrared for night operation, and just mark your drones. That's probably, on the battlefield, that's probably the best solution. When you go deeper is well, this is a war where everything is flying from east to west is Russian, everything is flying from west to east is Ukrainian. So, I mean, if you are already in depth within the territory of one of the two opponents, is quite clear what we're talking about. Okay, and this was the last question that I have selected from those that entered a question in the form online. Apologies for those who I didn't answer. Apologies for those who answered as a group. But Yeah, that was something that was owed to the people who did this. Now, let me get a glass of water, 2 minutes, and we go to the and I will look into the at the chat, and we can have a chat, a discussion. Okay, just give me 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And here I am back. Okay. Okay, sorry, I can't go really backwards, and I can go really backwards and see if and see is all the see, let's say, all the old posts. I start from now. So Alan Bailey, guys, Gus, you'll get NAFO after you saying this. Yeah, it's possible. 42 rules. Carlos, 42 rules. Hassan Khan, how much RCS for TFX? No idea. Maybe low, but... Simon 314, good evening. Is there any information about the 1 million of FPV drones for Ukraine pledged by NATO? There is no info regard to manufacturer and type. I think that goes together with the million of 155 millimeters rounds, to be honest. Andres Martinez Ramos, how about IFF? I think about drones. Yes, okay, big drones can have IFF. Small drones don't. Just the best thing is probably optical. I'm a little late, so maybe the question has already been asked. It is often said that the X-band radar allows missiles to be guided, but I-band radar does not because its accuracy is insufficient. So, yes, we spoke about this before, but in a nutshell, with the X-band, the accuracy that you can get is in the order of meters, even less sometimes, okay? With an I-band, the accuracy, particularly in azimuth and elevation, is way lower. But having said that, nothing forbids you to using a salvo of weapons. And if these weapons don't have a semi-active radar homing system, which actually could take them quite far from the target, but they have their own homing radar, their active radar homing, their guidance is active radar homing, they can get close enough. Obviously, it's a doctrinal matter, okay? The NATO aircraft, NATO pilots launch one missile. Okay, they get to the point where the kinematics of the engagement is optimal, they launch one missile. Occasionally two. If they are supposed to launch at a distance very low. Because they're guided weapons, they're supposed to work, and so that's the thing. The Russians, whose aircraft, the Su-27 and derivatives, have all the can transport a lot of weapons, 8, 10, 12 missiles, tend to launch them in salvos. 2 or 3 missiles, one with active radar guidance, one with semi-active radar guidance, one with infrared guidance. It's a different approach. It's a different tactic. Cougar 4 IK, please tell me what is the theoretical accuracy of these types of radar. Can it be improved? The theoretical accuracy that you can get from a radar is 1/2 of the wavelength for every radar in general. And that's the max. Then there are several other considerations that obviously reduce this accuracy. So the ideal radar gets 1/2 of the accuracy. An X-band radar has a wavelength of 10, 15, 20 centimeters, could in theory be this precise, in theory. Hassan Khan, is your arm okay? No, it's not okay. I was explaining at the beginning of the live. I have a neuropathic problem with the noise. Don't know yet if it is still the neck or the elbow. On Monday, I'm seeing a consultant and we'll see what to do. Buffet, hi, any future videos about the Rafale? Not at the moment, we just covered it. Well, if there's something new and important, yes, of course. Joy Boomsma, lasers on 6th generation airplanes. Okay, it seems that there is a pod, I think by Lockheed Martin, that has a laser powerful enough to create some problems with missiles. Okay, capable of hitting the body of a missile and damaging it enough to make it harmless. The problem with lasers is always the same. The power source, the batteries. Okay, and aircraft as they are today don't have enough power generation to have a laser that can do anything more than blind optical sensors. It is possible that with the future new engines there could be some functioning mechanism such that you can disable you can turn off some system, focus all the power on the laser, do some kind of things, or more likely we will have batteries with a very, very high power density that are not too heavy and that can be used on an aircraft. Lime Skyle on a tour. Identify the 3 aircraft before he returns. Okay, I can tell you actually. It's an F-15C, an F-15A, and an F-35B, a British F-35B. I bought them from Air Models, and by the way, I'm actually sort of quit suggesting it, but I am still an affiliate with Air Models. If you want to support the channel, you can go. You can use the link that is in the description. Go to the Air Models site, buy one of those. These are not toys; they are models. There's something. They're presents for someone who's a passionate and something you put there, and you leave them as exposed to the public. Okay. Okay. Ron Langeland, do you think electronic stealth could be an option similar to acoustic noise cancellation? I am very skeptic. Particularly since when AISA radars have been introduced, and those more or less use LPI features, okay, where they emit irregularly different impulses with different shapes at different timings, may or may not have a PRF, pulse repetition frequency, and so on. So the reason is that what you basically need to do is to receive the radar, understand that's a radar, very quickly, and then very quickly send back out of phase the same echo. You can. There's zero possibility that you can do this in real time. So while the electromagnetic pulse is hitting you, you also emit back. Zero. So the first one will always work. You need to you need to characterize the pulse, and it needs to be. So you need at least one. But then, since normally radars have hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands, in some cases, pulses per second, you need to understand this frequency. And if this frequency varies, you need to follow it. So it seems to me that it is something that requires a lot of computational capability. It is extremely difficult to... And with a radar that has just some of these modern measures, it is something which is extremely difficult to do, to follow. No, it's extremely difficult to emit exactly with the phase, with 180 degrees phase, with a 180 degree phase, the radar return is almost impossible. Could be possible against old generation radar, I suppose, but modern radars, I don't think so. I don't think it's possible. Xmeda, one guy mentioned passive radars, but he probably meant passive radio locators like Zek Tamara and Resviera system that are being used for many years and are able to detect stealth plane. I don't know. Okay, I'm not familiar with these. Lorenzo Catti is asking a question in Italian about stealth. Again, the question is, can stealth be obtained with electronic emissions? I mean, you can probably jam a radar and convincing it that it hasn't been jammed. But I mean, the Swedish with the Gripen have taken this approach. And by the way, we will have some more about the Gripen very soon, and some more about Sweden very soon. But So the Swiss have taken this approach, but honestly, it's very difficult. Active missiles defense for aircraft. You can carry a couple of small semi-active missiles on board in order to majorly improve your survivability. We already have interceptors. It is not impossible to use. It's not impossible. I think that R77 rather than M9X rather than Mika could probably be used in this way, but I mean, if you use them in this way, then you lose your offensive potential. I mean, room and space is always at premium, so. Rex Bailey, you need more sun on your bare skin for a slow but sure shot way to cure your left side. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I could do that. As I mean, considering how much sun there is in Italy. Kur 1980. Consequentially to the previous question, is NATO still ahead on the electronic warfare camp? I don't know what was the previous question, but I think that the Russians and the Chinese are much closer than we think. Electronic warfare is a broad term. So I think that when it comes to sensors, NATO has still some advantages, particularly radars. From the Russian side, less from the Chinese side. When it comes to electronic intelligence, I think they're more or less equal. When it comes to jamming, I think they're very close. If they're not equal, they're very close. And I would suspect that, because one thing that I suspect is that the Russians are not using everything they can in this area in Ukraine, according to the let's say the as we were saying before. No, every weapon has a cycle. No, and so I think this is the case. I don't know exactly. It's difficult to say because this is the most secret stuff that you have. Human Ostovar. Is Nebo M the most potent radar system to detect stealth today? It's a system, yeah. It's deployed, it's operational, it's working. The Turkish actually complained about it recently, but because the Rush. So the story goes that apparently the Russians say that the Neboem has the capability of seeing above the horizon, so it's over the horizon radar, which is using those very low frequencies is actually possible. And I'm pretty sure that they saw but as they always do, they probably removed this capability from the variant that has been sold to the Turks because they never sell a full working system. The Russians never sell a full working system. They call them the monkey models, so that they also some reduced capabilities in a way or another. Is it a maximum RCT? Is it possible splitting a radar system into a few cheap emitting sources and one or two passive receiving antennas so the anti-radar missiles would not damage the big receiver antennas? Yes. And it's a bit complicated, but because you need to have an because you need an integrated defense system altogether. But yes, I don't see any problem. That's potentially is a solution that we are going to see. Just consider though that this antenna size is mostly connected with the wavelength, so long wavelength, so low frequency, big antennas, and so there are always compromises. There's a limit to these breaking down. What I think we will be seeing is a total breakdown of the paradigm that you have one battery of surface-to-air missiles and one radar. We have a network of radars and a network of launchers, and they will operate like this. In the fifth generation of warfare video, I was explaining how the US is actually working on doing all of this and how the Russians have done this already, limited to the air defenses. Xmed again, can you elaborate on AWACS planes and their survival chances and defensive measures? They seem like easy targets, large, slow, and not maneuvering. Yes, they are easy targets. As you say. They have very powerful radar. They operate behind a line of defense, and when an attacker gets close, they just run. They can defend themselves, obviously, with the classical countermeasures that every aircraft may have, but chaff flares, but also jammers and this kind of things. It is also possible that we could carry some advanced infrared guided missile, light missiles, small missiles for self-defense, missiles that can hit over the shoulders, for example. But I haven't seen anyone doing this yet. And but yes, they are danger. They are one of the weak points of every combat network. They take them down, and a very important sensor is gone. New home usage. What do you think about S400's ABM capability? I think that they are reasonable. I think that today are pretty common. So I think that it is definitely capable. There's a missile in development which I think went into the back burner because of the war. That was supposed to be a hit-to-kill system launched by the S-400 and the S-500. So yeah, I think is a viable system. Amirul Farhan, I'm interested with the Indian radar. Can you give an assessment of how Uttam radar performance stands currently? No, I don't know anything about that, because I'm not following Indian and Pakistan. I used to do in the past, but I didn't, because unfortunately the common sanction then became a sewer and a cesspit of filth, and so I'm not following that any closely anymore. Okay, what time is it? It's almost 10 o'clock here. So I think we can stop here, I suppose, because I'm start being a bit tired and this start being slightly painful again. So okay, just one, because this is interesting. Have your view on of Russian capabilities changed in the past year? I felt you were more critical and mostly so flaws in their whole setup back in 22, 23. Actually, the opposite. So let's not confuse a number of things. So there is this thing that Russia claims that their weapons are actually capable, and they end up not being really capable. We don't have the confirmation of this. We've been told at the beginning of the Ukrainian war that the Russian missiles were very inaccurate. They had a circular error probability of 50, 60, 70 meters. So and they were useless. Okay. Then with obviously silently the RUSI publishes its studies, and then you sort of casually discover that both the Caliber and the KH-101 have a circular error probability of about 3 meters, which is which is basically exactly in line with Western capabilities. And so the point. So it's the point is that it's easy to judge the Russians less capable than the West, because they are always asymmetric. They always do something different from what the West would do. Okay, they do the things their own way, and this can be easily considered as not being capable of doing the things the right way, which we think it is our way. The way the West thinks it is. So it is very difficult to assess the real capability of the Russian systems, and I believe that they're keeping some in reserve and they're not using. There is other capabilities or weapons they're not using on purpose for the reasons that tonight we have discussed twice. That a weapon, when you use a weapon, the more you use it, the less effective it becomes. So they're keeping back some of the things. And whatever they do is somehow different from what the West does. So, because if you let me become philosophical for a minute, I think that the Russian has given up with the West, in the sense that they tried to represent their point of view, and they tried to integrate but they were also open at cultural influences, and now they are not. So that's, for example, the reason why with the reform of the mid-2000, they moved on to go to the brigade organization, and then the BTG organization, and then they moved on to air base, and then they changed the Air Force organization to air bases. And now they're progressive. They're rolling everything back. They keep doing the things their own way. Okay, and you say, but their own way is bad. No, it's not. It's not bad. It's just different. In terms of technological capability, don't think for a second that the Russians are less clever than us, of the Americans or the Europeans. It's only a matter of resources and the resources available. Okay, they are they have a lot of resources available. But in some areas, they didn't invest because they didn't think it was important, or because they thought they were doing something different. Okay, because they were being asymmetric. They were doing their own things. So I am not surprised. I wasn't at all surprised that I wasn't at all surprised that the Russians have demonstrated to be much more resilient than was expected in the West. Because if you judge them with our measure, you will think that they are a country on the verge of dissolution. But they're not, because they have their way, their system, their culture, even before their technology, their military doctrine, before anything like that. So I am... my opinion about the Russian hasn't changed, okay? I'm still thinking how they could do that bad judgment, mistake that caused the failure of the initial invasion. I'm still thinking how it was possible, but beyond that, they've demonstrated great resilience. They've demonstrated a great resilience and a great capability. This is not ethical, okay? There's zero doubt that they are aggressors, okay? At least in this historical phase. But once you've said that, this is not an ethical game, okay? To understand, I am right, you are right. This is not a court hearing, okay? This is not a trial to determine who's right, who's wrong. You know, it's you need to see what's actually on the field. So, but from my point of view, there's zero doubt that they are on the wrong side. But as an observer, I can't avoid seeing how they managed to do much better than expected by many. Honestly, not by me. And the reason why is because many Western analysts apply our categories to the assessment of the Russian situation. Could be the economy, the military, whatever. They apply Western categories. They don't apply to them. And mind, this is even more true for the Chinese. When you see the Chinese economy, which is on the verge of collapse since 10 years ago. The last 10 years, you always had those messages that, the Chinese economy is on the verge of collapse because there's this and this and that. It's the same error. You are applying Western categories to people who are not Western. Okay. So, yeah, okay. Sorry for this final ramble. So I was just rambling, and that's the point. That's the key point. You need to observe these people not as if they were Western. They had our similar culture. A culture similar to ours. They are different. They use different categories. You just need to learn their categories, and then you understand what they're doing. Not easy, obviously. It requires experience. It requires knowing the language, which I don't. I put some effort in trying to do that. So that's the reason why I'm saying this. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you didn't mind. I believe that for a couple of weeks, the only thing that I will be able to do will be live streams, honestly, because I can't really work a lot on a computer. Today I prepared everything basically with one hand. So, yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for watching. And, see you next time.